warm welcome. You're watching Business Today Television. I'm Sakshi Batra and this is BTS. That's Behind the Scenes, a show where we share a sneak peek into the latest edition of the Business Today magazine with all our viewers of BTTV. Joining in on this program with me is Mr. Nikunj Dubey, the Chief Ratings Officer of CareEdge ESG. We're also joined by my colleagues, Richa Sharma and Asa, who really worked very hard to put this newest edition. I've already got my copy in my hands, and this one is a special edition. For the first time ever, Business Today magazine team has put together an entire edition talking about India's most sustainable companies. We just had a special flagship event also around it, which you would have definitely seen on Business Today television, that awarded the leadership, the companies that have really stepped up their sustainability efforts in ESG, and we recognize them as part of our Sustainability Awards of 2025. Now, to understand this Sustainability Awards, and as a study, it was brought into focus by CareEdge. Nikunj is here, and he's going to help us really understand how did we actually go about selecting the key companies that we awarded. 15 companies who were the key winners of the Sustainability Awards 2025. And of course, what have been the biggest takeaways from the CareEdge ESG study this time around? Nikunj, warm welcome. Good to have you with us. Tell me, first up, the top 3-4 key takeaways from the study this time around. You've been looking at this aspect for decades now, but when it comes to how things have really stepped up in focus in 2025, what stood out for you?
Sakshi, thanks. Thank you for having me here. It's been a wonderful journey, as I said before, with Business Today's this year's Sustainability Awards for the most sustainable companies. And it was amazing experience being a knowledge partner for the whole event. Uh, it has been was a great enthralling exercise going through so many entities and coming out with the final results that we had. And the key takeaways, as I would say, would this year's would be how companies are taking initiatives seriously, taking forward towards their sustainability practices, and actually trying to showcase how they are transitioning towards a more, greener and a sustainable future. Uh, a good number of entities have showcased that how they are decarbonizing themselves, how they are mitigating the negative effects of the uh, carbon emissions, and how those initiatives have resulted into much more fruitful and tangible results, delivering a significant performance and a change over a period of time. So I think this has been a wonderful takeaway from the analysis that has happened this year.
Absolutely. Now, Nikunj, help me understand. I think what everybody would want to know is that, of course, the entire India Inc., corporate industries, they now are focusing more and more on the ESG initiatives. There are CSR initiatives towards environment, climate change as well. But how did we narrow down to 15 winners this time around? And which are the companies that really stood out in terms of our recognition this time? And what methodology that you used in the study this time that helped us pinpoint onto those companies as key winners?
So, Sakshi, what we did was that we had first basic elements that needed to be there in terms of our analysis to happen. We wanted to have data availability and hence companies showing transparency. Then you need to have data consistency and hence the seriousness of the organizations to put up the right data, and then relying on the data that has been given, which is backed by the assurance and the validations that is going to be done by a third party auditor. So these were the core elements or the building blocks through which we decided how we will go about assessing organizations. So what we did was that since we wanted data transparency and data availability, we first categorized and took a larger set of entities, which was the top 1,000 entities by market capitalization in the stock market. And the reason behind this was that because these entities are mandated by the regulator to necessarily disclose their non financial information, which is on ESG, through their business responsibility and sustainability reports. So that became the first building blocks of categorizing which entities to take into consideration.
Right.
Then, of course, there was a limited of time that we could have gone into this exercise, and due to which we had to classify and figure out only certain sectors that we could have taken into consideration. So then, what we did and thought was that we should take in what are the core elements of our economy.
Yeah.
So first we did was we took those building blocks or of the economy, which are your hard to abate sectors, what we call that, in terms of sectors like iron steel, your cement, oil and gas, power generation. These are the most utility factors and day in day out used behind our economy, where you don't see them, but they are acting as a mover for your economy. Then there was those sectors which consumers are using on a daily basis. Example, fast moving consumer goods. You have the real estate sector. So these kind of sectors were then selected. And then you always have the backbone of the economy, which is your financial sector, where the money flows in and makes the economy run. So that is how, in totality, we segregated and moved to a selection of 12 sectors, core sectors that we believed are most crucial from our economic point of view. And hence, that is where we moved ahead with.
Hmm.
Then what we decided to do was that how to do and assess these organizations on what should be the core criterias through which we should be assessing them. So instead of looking just generic mandatory compliances, because every entity would then by default would be liable to do those, we removed those things and actually put our emphasis only on those aspects where we believe that the companies are making certain initiatives, and
Sure.
probable differentiators between the organizations will come out. So we looked after their four aspects. We looked after their policy strategy statements, how the companies are making their strategies for the future. What are those initiatives that they are taking, which is resulting into their transition to the sustainable future? What is, after all these initiatives, what is the result that they have delivered on the current financial year? And then looking at that how these entities have transitioned and moved over the last 2 or 3 years, improving their performance year on year. So these has been the core elements and criteria around which our assessment got based. And we were extremely happy to see that there was so insightful initiatives that the organizations are taking that we are able to see. Uh, if to give a small example, we have these hard to abate sectors like cement and iron, steel, oil and gas. We would see that they are embracing renewable energy much faster into their operations process to decarbonize themselves. We are looking
Absolutely.
at financial institutions where they are spending more than the mandated requirement of CSR funds. So these have been one few core examples that have come out, which were very good differentiators.
Absolutely. Nikunj, thanks a lot for sharing all that insight as to how, of course, the study carefully looked at all of these aspects to pinpoint and to find out the companies that really stood out in their efforts of sustainability. Richa, coming to you, of course. You and along with Krishna, you've really written about how some of the biggest conglomerates of the country, the Tata Group, for instance, Reliance conglomerate, Aditya Birla Group, all of them have stepped up their sustainability efforts. Could you give us some insights from that?
Yeah, thank you, Sakshi. Let me just tell what Nikunj was mentioning. What they did was based on the public available data, and we went
Hmm.
further deep because we were face to face with the companies. We had a word with them, we discussed with them, we interviewed them, and it was like a experience, first-hand experience where they shared what they were doing. We could, some of the thing like visits also added to it, what they were doing, getting a ground reality or reality check of the thing. So what we found, why we picked up the big conglomerates to start with for our lead essay was we thought that those fall in one top 10 listed companies. Plus, they are into sectors which are hard to bid. Like for Aditya Birla, they are into aluminium. For Reliance, it's refining. For Tata Power, it's power. So they were into hard to bid sector to different sectors, like it's textile, it's IT. So they have variety of verticals. And interesting part was, they have fixed a group net zero where they'll be decarbonizing the sector, and they'll be going net zero emission kind of thing. So how they are putting together efforts, let's say for refinery and Reliance green energy business. So how they are balancing the two to achieve those targets. So we went into that, as Nikunj was mentioning. They've been using technology, they've been using renewables, they've been talking about increasing the energy efficiency, some of the low-hanging fruits, to some of the long-term, really capital-intensive efforts. If you call it carbon storage, carbon capture, storage, and utilization, to experimenting with green hydrogen. So, and the most important was how they're using technology to put together everything, get data generation, because that is the most important part. Until unless you don't have data, availability of the emissions, water usage, things, you cannot take a step and cut it down, like bring it down. So all these big conglomerates have plans, while they're different sectors. So they're looking at their business-wise plans, their geographic location, because that also measure. Because like for Aditya Birla, if it is working in a mining area where water is an issue, but there's not an issue with the energy, so they are focusing more on that part of it. The similar with other, like Tata as a group has a big sustainability project named Alingana, where they have listed out what the entire group will be doing. Reliance has one of the most ambitious net zero target of going net zero by 2035, while others have 40, 45, and 50. So it was quite interesting that how they're planning meticulously. Like Reliance has already announced 75,000 crores for the new energy business, where they're bringing in setting up giga factories, building renewables like solar, setting up plants. Similar with Aditya Birla for their minings, for their aluminium business, they are integrating hydrogen, experimenting with hydrogen. Tata Power, it's going big into renewables. They have a target that at least 50-60% of their power will be renewable in coming years. So they all have plans, and most important thing was how they are taking along their value chains, because that is the
Yeah.
most important part of it, because value chains is where the emission lies the maximum. So that which we call it as a scope 3. So they are hand holding their value chains. They're even working with the value chains, so that they also improve in their energy efficiency, water. So like Aditya Birla, they have a mandate, they've developed a system. So it's part of a mandate that the value chain partner are supposed to do these things. They have to maintain data. So they're taking along those smaller partners, but who are very key important to their business. Also, it's a wholesome approach, not just reducing their energy consumption or their carbon emissions, but also their partners, because they also have to keep in down that the business they are providing, the manufactured product. So the emission of that product is, or carbon emission is also less, so that it does not become problematic for the business. Which suppose it's a steel, it does not become problem. Let's say for the railways, which take steels from them, or reality sector. So it's a wholesome approach which all these conglomerates are working on.
Absolutely. Richa, very quickly, if you could also help us understand, industry's road to decarbonization, something that even Nikunj was mentioning, in especially the hard to abate sectors. What are you seeing as trends there?
See, hard to abate sector, I think, as Nikunj mentioned, steel, there has been a lot of progress in steel. Even the government has come out with a green steel target, a star rating steel. There's a taxonomy, what defines a green steel. Until unless you don't know what is green steel,
Yeah.
so how do you produce or manufacture that green steel? So hard to abate sectors, whether it is all the companies, some of them were our bodies also, like JSW Steel. So again, they are banking big time on renewable, because that is the most easiest, and like it's a low hanging fruit. You can have renewable integration to your plant, and you can immediately cut down on your carbon emissions. Second is the energy efficiency, the improving energy efficiency of their units. They're also increasing the scrap availability, because India doesn't have that much of scrap, but they are looking up for the scrap availability, so that it cuts down on the emission. And as I mentioned, for the long-term planning, where they have to really go net zero, they're looking at newer technologies like green hydrogen. So some of them are already piloting green hydrogen.
Right.
Whether it's Jindal Stainless, whether it's JSW Energy, they're piloting for the green hydrogen. They're also looking at production, manufacturing of green steel at their plants,
Sure.
and some of the capturing carbon and storage. Similar is for the cement industry, which is again another hard to abate sector and one of the most difficult. So they are looking at using reducing the carbon emissions from clinker. They are using most of the things now we have is the material slag and all those things is being added. So all those things, mixing of products to make the cement, to reduce their carbon footprint, renewable. So those are the things they are really working at. But yeah, it's still a long distance where they have to walk, because it's a hard to abate sector and energy, very really energy intensive sector. So until and unless they have something like a availability of green hydrogen, still a distant dream. They'll have to continuously rely on some of the fossil fuel to power the factory.
All right. Bringing in Astha into the picture now, when she's closely observed the auto and the fashion industry to really find out what kind of sustainability efforts are going on in those particular sectors. Starting off with the auto space first, Astha, what have you observed there? What are some of the biggest companies in the auto OEM space, ancillary space really doing? I think the first thing that comes to mind is EV, which is not just a sector move, but the entire country with policy push also going forward to probably progress towards the EV space. But what are the individual efforts that the companies and industry-wide statements are telling you?
Thank you so much, Sakshi, for having me here. Certainly, like both Nikunj and Richa mentioned, India Inc. is focusing a lot on decarbonization, and Auto Inc. is no different. A lot of companies, especially India's major automobile manufacturers, are now focusing on alternative fossil fuel technologies such as electric vehicles, hybrids, and CNG. You will be surprised to know that transport sector, it contributes 10% to of the country's greenhouse gas emissions, and India, which is the third largest automobile market in the world, it is planning to add 10 million vehicles by 2030. So certainly it's not an company-wise efforts. It's all the components coming together to bring decarbonization, especially in India. Where fossil fuel based technology, people were earlier dependent on fossil fuel based technologies. Now both consumers and automakers, they are gravitating to more non-fossil fuel based options. When it comes to electric vehicles, in 2024, the EV penetration in India, it surged by 27%, and it is largely because of how two-wheeler and three-wheeler industry is transitioning to EVs, and certainly even passenger vehicle manufacturers such as Maruti Suzuki, Tata Motors, Mahindra and Mahindra, they have pushed in a lot of effort to bring in electric vehicles. Tata Motors is expecting 30% of their of EV penetration in their portfolio by 2030. Mahindra and Maruti Suzuki are also putting in a lot of efforts for EV push. Companies such as Bajaj Auto, which are major key players in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler space,
Yeah.
they're also ramping up their EV production in line with the government's decarbonization
Sure.
norms. So a lot of and apart from these, a lot of startups are also coming in with electric motorcycles, with electric scooters. They're also pushing in the penetration of EVs in the country.
Right.
While we talk about EVs, another sustainable option that consumers are usually gravitating towards is hybrids and CNG. In fact, you will be surprised to know that there is as per Deloitte's 2025 global automotive consumer study, 33% of Indian consumers are preferring hybrid electric vehicles as a more sustainable and economical option as compared to fossil fuel technologies. Maruti Suzuki India, it is targeting 15 to 20% penetration of hybrid vehicles in its portfolio, whereas some other automakers which were earlier a bit apprehensive about hybrid technology such as Hyundai and Honda, they have also announced a lot of investment towards hybrid technology. So certainly hybrid has emerged as one of the most sustainable and economical option as India transitions to do decarbonization. Another option for that automakers are really betting on is CNG, is compressed natural gas or CNG cars. In FY25, CNG cars penetration, it surpassed diesel car penetration, which was the one-time fiat, the first fiat in the domestic automobile industry. Currently, CNG accounts for more than 15% in the domestic car market.
Now, Astha, when it comes to the fashion industry, again, one of the key contributors to climate change, to a lot of pollution when it comes to fabric, but at the same time, are companies getting more and more conscious, because this is a fast, trendy, space where they want to create a lot of stuff on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis. So where does all that, trend go once it's passé?
Certainly, Sakshi, textile or fashion industry is one of the most, raved about industry now. Gen Z and millennials, we want trends, we want them faster. We wanted an easier access to, these trends. And but these trends have an have a counter effect on the environment. India's textile waste is currently stands at 7.8 million tons, or 8.5% of global textile waste all over the world. Textile contributes to 2.3% to the GDP of India, 13% to the industrial production, 12% to the global exports. As per a report by United Nations Environment Program, every year around 92 million tons of textile waste is produced globally, and that's why companies have become conscious in their efforts to especially those who are working in merchandise and textile. They have become really conscious about how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in textile industry. A lot of companies are actually swapping large scale use of synthetic fibers such as polyester with recycled polyester. Reliance Retail, which is one of the country's largest textile manufacturer, it is advancing its study in sustainable polyester technology, while it focuses on performance, sustainability and circularity. Similarly, Raymond Limited, which is one of the oldest textile manufacturer, it is focusing on introducing dope dyed wool to replace traditional white polyester wool. This will help the industry in cutting dye use and slashing energy consumption. Apart from that, a lot of startups and MSMEs are using technologies such as AI and blockchain to forecast trends and streamline on demand production. So it is a collective effort by both large scale companies and MSMEs to for sustainable practices in fashion industry.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, Astha, also for sharing all that update. Well, this is just a sneak peek, but as you can see, I have a very thick issue in my hand. So you can actually go on and buy the edition for yourself to really read on the kind of industry-wide efforts that are being made to really make sure that sustainability is just not a buzzword, but goes even beyond the boardroom, right into ground zero and converts into action there. Thank you so much, Nikunj, Richa and Astha, for bringing up all of those insights into what has created this special edition of the Business Today, India's most sustainable companies. I hope this will give enough and more clarity to all our viewers and readers as well to find out how the companies are stepping up their efforts when it comes to the biggest risk that all of us face, climate change. Stay tuned with us on Business Today Television as we continue to bring you all the insights from the world of business and finance.